All right, everybody. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, we're going to be reviewing Memories of Ice by Steven Erikson, book number 3 in his magnificent, amazing, epic fantasy series, Malazan, Book of the Fallen. It's a 10-book series. Each book is about like 1,200 pages, and it is just amazing. I've got every single book in mass market paperback. I've got every single book in hardcover also. So let's take a look. The mass market paperbacks are all in the other room, but let's take a look at the hardcover collection. We've got the hardcover collection right down there. So we've got all the books right down there, starting from over there. Let's see, let's pan out. Man, I'm bad with the camera today. Sorry, folks. We'll stop that nonsense and get to the review. We always review these books covers first, because I love graphic design and illustration. So let's compare and contrast the hardcover version and the paperback version. Now with the hardcover version, we've got this great wraparound painting by Todd Lockwood that goes all the way around. Just looks, I mean, you've got these great characters up here. Just a beautiful painting. I love the typeface. Just the presentation of the book as a whole is great. The mass market paperback, the illustration is done by a great illustrator named Steven Stone. Yeah, that's right, Steve Stone. Nice, fiery, just, you know, looks cool. I like this one too. So if I were to judge, if I was to pick my favorite, I think I would clearly go for the hardcover version just because I think it looks nicer, even though this version's pretty cool too. Anyway, let's talk about, I've also got maps. Got a lot of maps in these things. A lot of maps. There's maps on every, oh, just so many different maps. We won't even go over it. And not only that, but if you followed my channel, you'll know that I met Steven Erikson back in 2004 at the Tempe, Arizona World Fantasy Convention when Gardens of the Moon had just come out. And I got this copy signed by Steven Erikson to me, to Brian. So, you know, I always show off my signed copies whenever I can. You know, I like to name drop like I'm, and so anyway, I don't even care. Name drop, man. I met the dude, got my book signed, and I love these books. Okay, let's get to the review. What is Malazan, Book of the Fallen? If you can go ahead and rewatch my review of Gardens of the Moon and then my review of Dead House Gates. This is book 3, Memories of Ice. Reading Malazan, Book of the Fallen is just like trying to read an epic fantasy in the middle of a tornado. Like a 10,000-mile-an-hour wind is just coming at you, and in that wind is just information after information, like plot point after plot point, character after character, thing after thing, just coming at you with absolutely you have no idea why they're coming at you. I mean, just Steven Erikson just throws everything at you, just whoosh, whoosh, book after book after book, scene after scene, without any much explanation, and you've just got to figure it out, which is part of the appeal and the draw of this series to so many people, because it really makes you slow down and read things very, very carefully so you don't miss out. And even that being said, you still feel like you're missing out on like 3/4 of this world. And I'm not even joking, folks. I have read this book. I have read the first 5 or 6 Malazan books twice. This one I've read the first 3 times. This one's the 3rd time. I'm still finding things that I'm just like, I didn't even realize this book was about that. Even though I've read it the third time, I'm still finding stuff in it. That's how in-depth, that's how dense these books are, just in their world-building detail. That's not spoon-fed to you. You got to just kind of roll with the story. and figure things out, kind of like the characters have to figure things out. Another thing is that I love about this book is the dialogue. I mean, there's in chapter 1, just in chapter 1, I was reading some dialogue between Gruntle, Corbel Broach, and Boucalane, and they were just talking about a cat. And the conversation was mesmerizing to me. And it was just goofy conversations about a cat. Really reminded me of the humor that, because there's a lot of humor in these books, and these characters, they sort of pick on each other a lot. And the humor reminds me a lot of the humor that you might find in a Larry McMurtry novel like Lonesome Dove, like the back and forth between Gus McCrae and Woodrow Call and the Texas Rangers. That's kind of the type of dry, sardonic humor that we get in these series too. So what is the book about itself? Well, so this book takes place directly after Gardens of the Moon. However, it takes place at the same time as Dead House Gates. So Gardens of the Moon is the first book here. Let me see if I can do this. Gardens of the Moon is book 1. Dead House Gates is book 2. Book 3 over here takes place right after this one, but it's the same time as this one. And it's got a lot of it's got all the characters from both books in this book. You know, we've got the great characters like Trots and Anvil and Gruntle, and like I said, Borkilane and Corbel Broach, and Stony and Quickben, Tattersail, Silverfox, Krupp. Those are just the ones I can name off the top of my head, but we're going to get into the meat of the story, which is there's an entire world here. Think of this world as a planet that is at war. Every single part of the planet is at war somehow. And these books, it just plops us down in different parts on that planet and sort of shows us where at in the war those characters are. And it's just nonstop, that kind of a thing. So you just kind of plop down in these different areas all over this planet with different... But for this book, the majority of this book were plopped down back in Genebacus, where the Renegade Second Army, the Renegade Malazan Second Army, led by Whiskey Jack, who's one of my favorite characters of all time, they are now battling the cannibalistic Panian Domain. I think that's how you pronounce that, the Panian Domain. Anyway, that's kind of what they're doing. These cannibalistic people are coming up from the south, and Whiskey Jack and his bridge burner crews have to kind of suppress the attack or whatever I mean, and that's just part of it. Whiskey Jack also sort of gets the help of 2 of the other great characters in this book, and that is he joins forces with Kaladin Brood, another one of my favorite characters in fantasy, and Animander Rake, probably the superstar of this series. And those 3, now they're kind of joined forces, and they are fighting against these cannibalistic people. And then another side story is Talk the Younger, who kind of disappeared in book 1, but then reemerges from what is called the Warren of Chaos, and he joins up forces with Lady Envy, and they also attack these cannibalistic Panian Domain. And so then it's just, that's the chunk of the war on this world that we're viewing through the lens of this book, which is similar to the chunk of war we were viewing in the lens of book 1, which is completely different from the type of war we were viewing in book 2, but anybody that's read this series knows what I'm talking about. If you haven't read the series, you just need to start, and then you will know what I'm talking about, sort of, Anyway, that's kind of about it. It's just an amazing thing. I can usually read about 100 pages an hour. And most books, if it's a 400, 500 page books, I can read it in an afternoon. So I read like 3 to 5 books a week. I have to slow down when I read about 50 pages an hour when I read these books here. God damn it. When I read these books here, it's about 50 pages an hour, and I don't read them straight through. I usually take a couple weeks, read 50 pages a night here, 50 pages a night the next night. Maybe I'll skip a couple nights, read another 50 pages. These books just, they really take time and effort to read, and so if you're into that type of reading, I mean, if you want fast, easy reads, you can go to your young adult fantasy section in the Barnes & Noble and find tens of thousands of those books. But if you want something that's really going to challenge you and keep you gripped at the same time and just throw so much fantasy, coolness, and badassery in your face nonstop, then you got to read Malazan, Book of the Fallen. So I give Memories of Ice. It is one of the best books in this series. Actually, I think the first handful are just 10s all around. 10 out of 10. So we'll give the Memories of Ice a 10 out of 10 also.